This is a harrowing story about a young woman who was found under a bridge. The main question for the police was whether the victim had jumped down herself or if someone had intentionally pushed her. Thanks to surveillance cameras, they found the answer and were able to reconstruct the timeline of that night. On April 2000, a man was driving across a bridge in Burlington, New Jersey, when he noticed something resembling a human body on the ground below and called the police. Detectives arrived at the scene and saw a young woman with no identification on her, making it impossible to immediately determine her identity. It all seemed as though she had taken her own life by jumping from the bridge. The bridge's height at that spot was about 35 meters, comparable to a 10-story building. Naturally, the body was severely damaged from the fall, so the police could only wait for the autopsy results. While medical examiners did their work, detectives had to establish the victim's identity. They distributed her description through local newspapers and news outlets, which quickly bore fruit. The woman's ex-boyfriend recognized her as 21-year-old college student Rachel Cioni. Rachel Elizabeth Ciani was born on April 18, 1978, in the relatively small American town of Bensalem, Pennsylvania. After her parents divorced when she was very young, and a few years later her mother passed away, she and her two brothers lived with their father and his new wife. The family had modest means but did not live in poverty. They all lived harmoniously, and the stepmother treated her husband's children well. After high school, Rachel enrolled in Bucks County Community College in Newtown, as her family could not afford private college tuition. While community colleges are not considered prestigious, the tuition was significantly cheaper. There, she studied psychology and later took acting classes. Despite the low cost of tuition, Rachel still had to work to pay for college and her living expenses nearby. She got a job as a dancer at the Diva nightclub. She initially kept this fact from her family, but they eventually found out and expressed their disapproval. However, her father and stepmother acknowledged that she was an adult and had the right to do as she pleased. According to relatives, no serious conflict arose from this. At the club, Rachel earned very impressive sums of money, especially for the year 2000. Working 3 to 5 nights a week, she could make about $400 per night. Despite this, she was very frugal. Tuition cost only about $1,000 per semester, not including textbooks. Rachel drove an old beat-up car and lived in a house with 7 other tenants. It's now impossible to know what she was saving for, but with her income from the club, she could afford a lavish lifestyle. Now that we are familiar with her biography, let's return to the bridge under which Rachel's life came to an end. The police quickly dismissed the theory that she had jumped on her own accord because they found blood on the bridge itself. Analysis showed that the blood belonged to Rachel, which meant that she was most likely killed. The preliminary investigation suggested that someone had inflicted a stab wound on her, then threw her over the bridge's railing. Determining the exact cause of death was difficult due to the multitude of injuries one sustains from falling from a great height, which can sometimes obscure other injuries. The police began searching for suspects and immediately focused their attention on the club where she worked, leading to their first lead. The club's management mentioned a former employee who had been fired for harassing Rachel. Detectives investigated his connection to the case but concluded he was not guilty. Then they had a new suspect, a regular club patron named Jonathan Nice. Jonathan, a 35-year-old man, ran a successful business, lived in a large, respectable house, and had a good reputation among neighbors. His wife knew he regularly visited the stripper club, but did not object. In fact, she sometimes picked him up from there when he was too drunk to drive himself. On other occasions, Jonathan would stay overnight in a hotel near the club. He was arrested in 1999 for DUI, and another offense could have led to the loss of his driver's license. Rachel was his favorite dancer. He left her the most generous tips and often paid hundreds of dollars just for her to talk to him. To establish Nice's connection to the case, the police reconstructed the timeline of Rachel's last day. On March 31, she finished her shift at the club, changed into jeans and a sweater, and then headed to a bar. Jonathan followed her in another car, and Rachel's friend Rebecca also joined them. When the girls got into the car, Rebecca took a photo of Rachel, which later helped the police confirm the deceased's identity. That night, Nice got drunk and began banging on the doors of the Diva club after it had closed. A passing police officer noticed, but the security guard and the club's management convinced him that Jonathan was a regular customer and posed no danger. Afterward, Rachel decided to walk the heavily intoxicated Nice to his hotel, and that was the last time she was seen alive. The police started their search for clues to the hotel, and they were immediately met with something interesting. In the shower, they discovered blood, but there wasn't enough material to perform a DNA test. Next, they reviewed footage from the few available surveillance cameras and were fortunate to find a lead. On one of the highways leading to the bridge, they noticed Jonathan Nice's pickup truck, in the open bed of which lay something resembling a body. The quality of surveillance camera footage in 2000 left much to be desired, but it was enough for the police. Jonathan officially became the prime suspect in the case. Soon after, detectives found a witness who also saw the pickup that night. A tractor driver passing by Jonathan Nice's vehicle on the same route could clearly see the body in the bed of the pickup due to his high vantage point. The witness managed to make out that the person was wearing dark pants and white socks. He did not notice the driver's face but did see something else. The man's hair was gray and combed back, as if he had just come out of the shower. A logical question arises. Why didn't the witness report this to the police? As he admitted during questioning, the situation didn't seem criminal to him. He thought the person in the bed was just drunk, being taken home from a party. This happened around 3 in the morning. The police continued to review camera footage and saw Nice's vehicle returning 25 minutes later, with no body in the bed anymore. With this set of evidence, they interrogated the man, but he denied any involvement. Meanwhile, forensic experts examined his pickup and found traces of blood. DNA analysis showed that the blood belonged to Rachel. Jack continued to deny everything. After being presented with the DNA results, he claimed that he was not driving the vehicle, someone else was. According to him, Diva club staff had taken his keys several times when he was too drunk to drive. They could have made a duplicate key to frame him. Of course, the police were skeptical of this story and arrested Nice, charging him with murder. The prosecution's case was meticulously prepared. According to the pathologist's report, Rachel was strangled shortly before her death. The investigation suggested that on the night in question, the woman was escorting Jonathan to his room, planning to talk to him as usual and earn some money. However, the man began to make advances, trying to initiate intimate contact. Rachel refused and he lost control and attacked her. Jonathan likely thought she was dead, which was not the case. This raised the question of what to do next. He couldn't leave her body there because the room was registered in his name. It was too risky to carry her out through the door, so he decided to drop her from the balcony directly into the bed of his pickup. But he couldn't hold on to her, and she fell to the ground. Forensic experts later found blood traces in the parking lot. He then loaded her into the bed of his truck and drove to the bridge, where Rachel's life came to an end. This story is supported by the testimony of the hotel manager. Initially, he saw Jonathan Nice walking quickly toward the parking lot in the middle of the night. Later, Nice returned and after some time approached to return the room keys. He didn't say a word and smelled strongly of soap. The judge set Nice's bail at $1 million, but later halved this amount. Over 20 of his friends attended the bail hearing, all speaking positively about Nice, and some even helped gather the necessary bail money. The trial lasted a month. During this time, Jonathan Nice did not once speak personally, leaving all work to his lawyers, who made every effort to defend him. Realizing there was a plethora of evidence against their client, they attempted to discredit the victim. They suggested she had connections with numerous lovers, was acquainted with a dangerous biker gang, and had a penchant for illegal substances. The court found no evidence to support these claims. The trial received significant media coverage, deserving a special mention. Most publications portrayed Rachel as almost culpable for her own death. The fact that she worked as a dancer at a nightclub was heavily emphasized in nearly every article, starting with the headlines. The media eagerly reprinted unverified information about lovers and illegal substances circulated by Jonathan's lawyers. In contrast, newspapers often referred to him as a businessman and family man with good reputation. The fact that a married man spent large sums on dancers and alcohol in dubious places was seldom mentioned. The journalist's motives are simple. Stories filled with dirty details, intrigue, and unexpected twists are more interesting to most readers than yet another tale of a murder. Fortunately, all the above did not help Jonathan avoid punishment. Overwhelming evidence indicated his involvement in the girl's death. On November 29, 2002, the jury found him guilty. The court sentenced Nice to the maximum punishment for the charge, life imprisonment, with the possibility of parole after 30 years. After the verdict was announced, Jonathan spoke for the first time during the trial. He briefly declared his innocence and expressed hope that the real murderer would be found, likely speaking as his lawyers advised. Immediately after the verdict, they began filing appeals and looking for loopholes to free their client, nearly succeeding. Considering the events occurred on the border of two states, the lawyers seized this opportunity. The jury could only convict if the victim died within their state's jurisdiction. Jonathan's hotel was in Pennsylvania, while the bridge was in New Jersey. According to one forensic expert's conclusion, Rachel died from the fall from the bridge, meaning Nice could only be tried in Pennsylvania. This gave Jonathan the right to request bail release, set at $1 million again. However, his father, who had helped pay for the attorney, had already spent all his money and could not come up with $1 million. Moreover, he had no funds to maintain high-class lawyers, forcing Jonathan to use a public defender. Later, the court rejected Nice's claims related to the legal nuances of passing the verdict. Therefore, he remained in a New Jersey prison with the original sentence, where he remains to this day. He can only apply for early release in 2032. The man does not lose hope of an earlier release and constantly floods the court with appeals, which have so far been fruitless. Perhaps if the lawyers had chosen a different defense strategy, Jonathan could have received a lighter sentence. However, they were either confident in their victory or Nice denied any possibility of giving a confession. Nonetheless, none of this could change the fate of Rachel Cioni, who lost her life at 21. There will long be discussions about what her life could have been had she chosen a different profession. But the fact remains, nothing can justify intentional murder.